Now, bilateral talks between President Park Geun-hye and visiting Russian President Vladimir Putin came to an end just a few hours ago. Now, President Putin becomes the first leader among Korea's four neighbors to visit Seoul, and today's bilateral summit was his second with President Park.
And to give us the details on what was discussed during the summit and what the major accomplishments were, we now connect live with our presidential office correspondent, Jinju. Jinju, fill us in.
Daniel, the summit agenda this time around was focused on economic cooperation. The majority of projects discussed would support President Park's so-called Eurasia Initiative, which aims to create a huge single market in Eurasia, and some of the projects are closely related to North Korea. One of the key agenda items was Seoul's possible participation in a joint railway project between North Korea and Russia. The 54-kilometer-long railway would run between Russia's eastern border town of Hasan and the North Korean port city of Rajin. A Korean consortium composed of KORail, POSCO, and Hyundai Merchant Marine plans to invest around 210 billion won, or $196 million in the project. By doing so, it aims to assume around half of Russia's 70% share in the project. Whether the Korean consortium will actually take part in this project will be decided next year. But a notable thing is that if Korean companies do participate, it will be an opportunity to expand three-way projects with North Korea and Russia, laying the foundation for Pyongyang to eventually open up.
Now, Jinju, not only that, there were also a number of MOUs signed in the fields of finance and shipbuilding. What more can you tell us about those?
Well, the state-owned banks of Korea and Russia, the Korea Exim Bank and Russia's Bank for Development and Foreign Economic Affairs, will invest in a development fund worth $1 billion for 3 years to minimize financial risks and support Korean and Russian companies taking part in development projects in the Far East Siberian region. Other MOUs were signed for cooperative projects in the shipbuilding sector. Korea will receive orders from Russia for the construction of 13 LNG carriers in return for sharing its technology in the industry. Korea called on the Russian government to support its development of a sea route in the North Pole through Russian waters and agreed to cooperate in building ports in the Far East. Another important item on the summit agenda were cultural and personal exchanges. The two nations signed a visa waiver agreement for visitors planning to stay in the other's country for 60 days or less.
And of course, one topic that cannot be left out when it comes to bilateral talks with South Korea. What was discussed when it came to North Korea, Jinju?
Daniel, the Russian president threw his full support behind President Park's trust-building process with the North, describing the policy as crucial in normalizing inter-Korean relations and maintaining stability in the region. The two sides also reaffirmed that they will not tolerate Pyongyang's development of its nuclear and missile capabilities, which goes against the international community's demands and UN Security Council resolutions, and urged the communist state to abide by its international obligations and previous pledges. Presidents Park and Putin also decided to work together toward a resumption of the six-party denuclearization talks with other member nations.
All right, thank you. That was our presidential office correspondent Jinju reporting live from the nation's top office on today's summit between President Park Geun-hye and President Vladimir Putin.